So tonight we're going to launch this 6-week series. And so tonight is really the framework, the foundational pieces. I'm going to give you a little bit of a peek about what we're going to talk about in the future weeks. So tonight's more of an overview and literally a way to sort of start thinking about your B2B lead generation. And I wanted to sort of first kick this off with a quick land acknowledgement, because I do want to acknowledge that even though we are virtual, many of us are on sort of unceded ancestral and traditional territories of a variety of indigenous peoples. I am on the unceded ancestral and traditional territories of the Musqueam peoples. And I am a guest on this land. And so as a guest, I want to basically be on my best behavior. I want to make those proud who have really allowed me to have this opportunity to share with you what I know, to share with you what I've learned, and to honor those who came before us as we sort of embark on this 6-week journey around digital marketing in the B2B space. So really tonight, I just want to appreciate that I have this honor and privilege of being here today, and that I can be here and share what I know with you and hopefully with others around the world. So thank you. And I just want to set the tone and for the next 6 weeks as we really start to share and learn more about each other. So the first thing is a little bit about myself, Rochelle. So who am I? Many of you may have looked at my LinkedIn profile, but basically my background is I've been in a lot of different places. I am solidly, I would say, at the intersection of marketing, finance, and digital is where I play. That's what I really love. I've had careers and chapters of my career in many, many different spaces. I've been in business, I guess now over 30 years. And one of the things that I want to highlight for tonight's presentation specifically is that in the B2B space, it's been a part of my experience in a lot of different roles. I've been intrapreneurs, if you want to use that term, for large enterprise companies. So I've been on the other side of the desk where people are pitching to me, trying to get me to sort of buy their services. So it's one thing to be on that side of the table. I've also been a B2B marketer from an enterprise business where I worked for Siemens and Honeywell and IBM, where I was working with, where my customers were Intel and AMD and TSMC in the semiconductor industry. So I've had a lot of experience doing outreach from large companies. And I've also been the head of a digital agency where we were basically trying to do contracts with large enterprise companies. Some of those were in the entertainment industries, such as I worked with MTV in the US, Mattel, Warner Brothers. But I also was CEO of a digital publishing company and had to work with lots of publishers, traditional publishers, Random House, Penguin, Simon Schuster, probably some of the names that you might know. So I've had a lot of experience working both from a startup, scrappy startup, trying to get their interests, as well as sort of peer-to-peer. So regardless of where you are, these are some of the lessons learned. And hopefully today I can give you a sense of how to structure some of your thinking around this so that you can really understand how to approach sort of enterprises. And because a lot of sort of digital marketing online is focused on business to consumer, so B2C, I thought it'd be really great to focus very much on the B2B and some of the intricacies around that. So let's dive in and let's talk about what this is. So today we're going to talk about this B2B lead generation framework, and hopefully you'll be able to describe it at the end. I'm going to go into key elements of the framework. Again, it is a framework, so we'll go into more details on each of those elements in future weeks. And hopefully after tonight, you can start building your strategy for your particular organization and what that looks like. So that's what the goal is tonight, is to set that foundational piece so that we can then build on it over the upcoming weeks. So I'm going to give you an overview of the framework first, and then we're going to review each element with a few examples. And then I'm going to give you some action items and next steps. I always love talking about things, but I also want to give you something concrete to walk away with, to think about, to stew on, because I think that's the best way that we can learn is when we apply, not just when we listen and do things along those lines. So, and then I'm going to give you a few additional links and resources. I thought there are a few things I won't be able to cover tonight. So here are some quick links if you want to follow up or you have questions. So you'll have those as well. So the first thing is a framework. And I want to start with this framework because I think it's really important to, okay, someone's saying the downloadable PDF, there we go. It's there. I just posted it to chat again. So there it is for anyone who has missed it before. I just posted it. The first thing in your lead generation framework is to define your target audience. And we're going to break this down into sort of what that actually means. But it is really critical to understand who are you targeting, who is it you want to reach, who are you trying to connect with, right? And then once you've done that, you want to set your goals and objectives. And this is what is it you want to do? Often it's easy to start getting really focused on marketing and digital marketing, lots of tools, lots of options, and you can really go down a lot of rabbit holes. So the goal is to really figure out what are your particular goals and objectives so that you can keep that as a filter to make sure you are very focused on what you want to do. Then we were going to talk about developing content and something called lead magnets. And tonight we're just going to touch on these. Next week, we're going to do a full content marketing workshop. That's all we're going to talk about. So we'll flesh that out even further. But tonight I'm going to give you a starting point to thinking about your content and what content you're going to create around your B2B lead generation. And then you want to nurture and close those leads. And this is really where marketing and sales do a bit of a handshake and where you want to make sure that your marketing is in alignment with your sales. We have Peter on the call, who's the other EIR executive in residence with New Ventures BC, who's been giving a lot of great advice around the sales process. So I will touch on this, but it's going to be really short. In essence, that is one bubble that represents many, many steps, but that would be your sales process, nurturing and closing those leads. And then I want to talk about something that happens after you close the leads, and that's really around customer referrals and how important that really is in the B2B space. So really getting those referrals, once you close the sales, it is not over. We want to get to a point where those customers become advocates, become brand ambassadors, become referrals, and refer those in their network so that you can grow your sales things. And then, as I like to say, rinse, repeat, we start over again. And we look to see, are the customers we're getting the ones that we targeted? Do we need to adjust our target audience at all? Are we getting more feedback? And we go through this cycle again and again. So it's very iterative. It is not something that you sort of set and forget it, right? But it is something that you definitely want to focus on as you move forward. So this is a basic framework. Now I'm going to talk about each one of these steps in a little more detail. So the first thing around sort of targeting your audience, defining your target audience, is market segmentation. And I'm going to cover some basics tonight because I'm not sure if everybody has done this or is familiar with it. So bear with me if you're like, I know this already. Maybe this is a nice refresher on market segmentation. And market segmentation, there are a lot of ways in B2B that we do market segmentation. And the first way, or some of the most common ways, are around industry. So verticals, going after the financial services industry, the retail industry, e-commerce, and we sort of divide our target audience by industry. It might be location, maybe they are geographically located, or maybe they're in multiple locations. So what are you looking for? What are some of the characteristics of your target market? And then we talk often about organization size. And organization size, okay, we'll often hear about SMBs, small and medium-sized businesses versus enterprise businesses or large businesses. But there are also a couple of ways that you can look at your organization size. And it might be revenues. And one of the things that I'm finding really exciting or interesting now is that you can have very small companies in terms of the number of employees with quite large revenues. We're using technology and becoming a lot more productive and efficient. So when you say organization size, are you referring to revenues? Are you referring to net profit? Or are you referring to the number of people or employees that they have within their organization? And depending on how you define this, there probably might be different messages that you want to talk about or reasons why you were targeting those companies. It could be both, but definitely organization size are a couple of variables there. Another thing to consider around your market segmentation are transactions. So how many transactions might your customers have? How frequently do those transactions happen? Maybe it's the value. Do they do large transactions or lots of small ones? When you're looking at them, you're trying to figure out who is it that I really want to speak to, thinking about their business and how they sort of conduct their business and what are some of the sort of the characteristics of their business is really important. And that may also impact what you do. Usage, in terms of maybe your solution, Are they going to be heavy users of your solution, medium, or light? Is this a one-time thing? Is it one-off? And once they've done it, they don't come back to it for a long time? Is it something that they're going to be doing on a daily basis and it will become a habit? Those are the ones we love. But really, what do you see, and which sort of customers are you looking for? Which ones would be ideal? Obviously, it's always heavy, but it really depends on your solution and what you're selling. Sometimes usage is also complementary products in business to business. So maybe I'm targeting customers who are using another technology that I integrate with, or maybe I'm using customers who are using a specific technology that I plan to replace because we do something better. So sometimes usage is not just how will they use your particular solution, but also what is the ecosystem of things that they're already using, and how does what you offer fit in with what they already have or what they already do. And then finally, time in business. So are you looking to target other startups who are pretty young and nimble and have a certain characteristic about them? Are you looking for businesses that have been in business 5 to 10 years, ones that have been there 50 years? Often, depending on how long they've been in business, there are certain characteristics that you want to address, and that will be helpful to your marketing efforts as you sort of target them and approach them. Now, once you've done some of these, and these are not absolutely exhaustive, but these are some of the common ones that I see for B2B, you will hopefully come up with your primary target market. And the primary target market will then be sort of this compilation of all of answers to all of these questions, right? But you may also recognize, there actually is a secondary market that I also really think could be quite attractive. And so you may come up with 1 or 2, maybe even 3. I would probably limit it to 3, because for most companies, if you're fairly small, you don't want to dilute your efforts too much. But there might be some overlap between that secondary market and primary market. And so you definitely want to not ignore it if you think that's happening. Sometimes we also find a primary target market might be like small and medium businesses, and the way we handle them, we can do a lot more volume, we can automate processes, but then the secondary target market is enterprises, which are a lot more high touch, and those are areas that we're going to look at a little bit differently. So, you may find that the two complement each other, but definitely how you handle them, what you message, how you support them could be quite different. But this is really around the market and what markets are you going after. And at the end of the day, you do not market to an organization. You actually market to people. And so who specifically is your customer? And to talk about this, I wanted to just, again, briefly talk about customer personas, sometimes called buyer personas, and really the importance of having a customer persona. So customer persona is and I'm going to call it a semi-fictional representation. So it's not a real person, but it's a representation of maybe a group of people that showcases the key traits of your ideal customer. And so your target customer. And so it really is something that you have spent time where you're thinking about a person. And one of the things that I've been spending a lot of time in recent years working with my clients and working with other companies is making sure that these customer personas are based on data. So in the past, we would have said, oh, I think, we like, people in the age group from 35 to 45, and this is my gut feeling. Now I'm really challenging most people to say, go into your customer information, look at who you have, and drive your customer personas based on what information you have. Now, if you don't have any customers, give it your best guess and come up with these come up with a customer persona. But then once you start getting customers, you might want to go back and tweak it and update it based on real customer data that you're receiving. This is how you sort of do customer research, and you make sure that you're doing things in a way that makes sense. What is included in some of these customer personas is a fictitious name and photo. So you give it a name, you give them a photo, because what we're trying to do is really, who is this person? Can I really go, oh, I know that person? I also like to think of it in a way, if I were to tell a colleague of mine, this is my target customer, they'd go, oh, I know someone who's just like that, and I can put you in contact with them, right? So a name, a photo, generally a position or title, and maybe even their job experience. What has their job experience been like? What have they done in the past? How did they get to where they are? Personality type is sometimes a really great thing to add. So when I say personality type, I'm talking about, are they introverted versus extroverted? Are they right brain versus left brain? Are they optimistic? Are they pessimistic? We don't have to go through a huge Myers-Briggs sort of evaluation here, but really what are some of the traits around them? Because that will also impact how you market to them, what information you provide to them, even opportunities, how you engage with them will change depending on some of those personality traits, because you want to meet them where they're most comfortable and where they are, even from a marketing perspective. So one area that a lot of people forget about, and especially with digital marketing is key, is what are their online behaviors? So I often ask, people often ask me, where should I go? Which channel should I pick for blah, for XYZ, right? And I always say, I'm not going to tell you where to go. Let's go and find where those people already are. Let's find out, where are they hanging out? Where are they talking? Where are they getting their news? Where are they getting their information from? What are those resources? What are those websites? What does that all look like? Because those online behaviors should then dictate your communications, your strategies, a lot of the tactics that you do later on. So online behaviors are really key component to a digital marketing customer persona. We want to know digitally, where do they live? Where do they live? Where do they have fun? Where do they get excited? And where do they get information? A customer persona should also talk about the pain points and challenges of your customers. So what are the pain points? What are the challenges that they are facing? And ultimately, the reason you're doing this is because I will always ask you, how are you solving those pain points? How are you solving those challenges? Really, at the end of the day, your solution has to solve a problem that your customers have. You can't create problems. You can't tell them what it is. It has to be something that they are struggling with, and I want to understand what that is. What are their goals, right? So what is it they want to achieve? What is it that how can you help them achieve those goals, right? So they have pain points, they have challenges, hurdles, but they also have goals. And I have these in bold because this really helps understand from a marketing perspective, what are the messages you want to send out? What are the messages you want for them to hear about what you do and how you can help them, right? Now, also, I like to ask, what are some of the objections that will come up? What are some of the objections that you anticipate you might get, and why? And for B2B, one of the biggest sort of basic objections is build or buy. So the question is, should we as an organization build this ourselves, do this ourselves, develop it ourselves, or should we buy and outsource? And in most cases, when you're doing B2B sales, marketing, you're saying, we can get you there faster. We can get you there perhaps with more flexibility, maybe more agility. So you want to be really clear that you know how to answer that question, build versus buy. But also understand that over time, your customers may grow and they may at some point choose to bring that in-house, and then they may choose to build it and build that capacity in-house. So again, that's a really big question that I always ask people in business to business, because that's usually one of the fundamental questions. Now, other questions or objections that might come up, we don't have a budget, or not now, or not ready. And so again, for budget issues, my question is, do you know their budget cycles? Do you know when they set their budgets? Do you know when they're gonna actually make decisions around budget? And in terms of not now, not now, when, when might this make sense, or things along those lines. Also on the objection side, no budget. Is there any way you can help them find budget? That's another way to solve that pain point. If it's a pain point or a challenge, is there some way you can help your customers find the funds or find the budgets to actually pay for your solution, right? And so that's something to keep in mind as well. Any questions so far? I'm just checking. And okay, great. So here's an example of a B2B sort of persona. This is Diane Director. She is the Director of Critical Care at a regional hospital. We have demographic information around age, salary, credentials, so educational degrees, things like that, even married, 2 kids, how long has she worked in the hospital systems, things like that. So again, that job experience piece. We also have values and goals, because values and goals are things that we really can connect on. So what are the values and goals that your persona has? And then what is this experience that they seek or that they want in engaging with you, in engaging with your solution, your products, your services? What is it that they are really seeking that you can deliver on? You'll see there's in the middle of the top, there's the problems. So what are the problems? And using quotes, literally almost using words. If you've interviewed customers, using literally the quotes from customers so that it's very clear this is how the customer says it. These are the words they use. This is the tone they use. That really helps solidify that customer persona piece, right? We have the role and level of seniority, so you understand roughly within an organization, where does this person sit? Who do they have influence over? Who do they report to? Basically, what is the ecosystem around them that they have to navigate, and thus you have to navigate if need be, really understanding that. I love doing one day in the life. So what does that look like in the life of that person, right? So what is it? And again, some of this information can come from customer surveys, and something that you want to do that. So you can definitely start asking them this information if you already have customers who do that. And I would definitely start reaching out. I think there was a question here that just came up. Rajesh said, if you already have email IDs and phone to reach out, is it a good idea to start emailing them? Yes, you can definitely start emailing them and maybe getting pieces of this information over time. You don't want to do it all at once necessarily, if you can, but maybe ask little small surveys to engage them, to show that things are going well. And Danielle, here's a link to the slides, so you can download those now if you want. Her main info sources and watering holes. So again, where does she or he get that information, right? Where do they get information that they actually think is valuable, right? Is it newsletters online? And I'm thinking offline as well as online, because that will impact your marketing channels, right? Where are they, again, that you need to know? And what are their most common objections? And think about specifically around your products, around your industry. So this is not necessarily generally, but if you were to come in, what are some common things that you can anticipate so that you are prepared for that and that you actually have answers for that going into it? And then at the bottom, things maybe sort of opportunities, things that maybe would be really intriguing. So again, there's an opportunity here to think about just big ideas. These are the kinds of things that we would be doing going forward. So Sam is asking me a question, is family information important for a B2B persona? Family information, I don't think you have to, it is important to a certain degree, because if they have families, then you might want to think about something that would appeal to someone who has a family. There are things that I think are really important that you might want to address. I think that you don't have to go into like super finite details, but I do think it's nice to know, because here's the thing: if you're talking about someone who's single versus someone who's married versus someone who has kids in school or someone who has kids in college, there might be different ways that you interact with them. You might offer them events, might be at different times of the day, because they're managing work-life balance looks very different at different stages in our lives. So often I think about family stages and what stage of life are they in. Can impact what they're doing. If you have lots of people with young families, often, they're busy at night. So that is a really hard time to get them to attend something or go to something. So this is why sometimes that family piece, we have to really think about these people holistically. None of us live in a vacuum. So holistically, how can you provide information and market to them in a way that really works for them? Jeremy was asking me, what are my thoughts on the relative importance of Christensen's jobs to be done versus persona? So the thing with jobs to be done, I like jobs to be done. You answered it kind of really where I probably was going to go, is I definitely see them as complementary. I think personas often are a good place to start because people can get a little bit more holistic view of who their customers are. And then really maybe delving down into the jobs to be done as something that's complementary to that. So I don't see it as an either or. I think it's just different lenses through which you can look at your customers. So I think that's a really awesome way to look at things. Customer personas, think about it and build them incrementally. So don't be like, oh, we're going to go off for 6 weeks and try to build one. Build it, but have a template or have literally maybe even an Excel spreadsheet. And every time you get a new customer, look at that customer, see what patterns you're seeing. Is there anything here that can help hone and tweak the customer persona that you're developing? So again, this can be done incrementally, and start with whatever information you have, might be limited, and build on it over time. So now we have our personas, we have our target audience, we know the target market, we have a target customer persona. So now the next thing with B2B lead generation, and I'm focusing specifically on lead generation, is what do you want your leads to do? And this seems like a really obvious question, but you'd be surprised how many people want to just, get people to come to their website. And then what, right? So what is it you really want your leads to do? What is, again, that goal? What is that objective? And I'm going to even add here, what are your targets? I think it's really important for you to have those up front, because as I always say, if you don't know where the finish line is, how do you know you finished the run, right? So you need to figure out what that goal is and what is most important. Now for B2B, most of the time, there are what I call primary conversions. I'm going to use that term conversions, where you basically convert, a lead or a qualified lead or a prospect into a customer. And most of the time, that's a purchase. That could be a purchase of a product, purchase of a service, a purchase of some sort, or a donation. Those are generally like the primary conversions that everyone is looking for. That's a slam dunk. That's where we're really happy. That's what we're going for. That said, we can't always get people to do that off the bat. And so I often ask people to think about a secondary conversion. And usually a secondary conversion is something that they can sign up for that provides you with contact information. And contact information then allows you to continue to build that relationship over time. And maybe if they haven't converted immediately through this additional contact that you have, you can then maybe be one, top of mind, and two, convert them at some point in the future. So really, when you do B2B lead generation, if you get them to your website, let's say, try not to let them leave without getting their contact information. So figure out what that looks like. Some common things are a free trial. So start up with free trial. Free trial, we see this all the time. You can upgrade later. You can purchase later, buy the premium later. So free trial, but you have to sign up for the free trial. So you get a name, an account set up, and things like that. Maybe there's a webinar that you have, and so signing up for a webinar or a demo. But again, here I want to also be careful when you're saying a webinar, what is of value to the person signing up? This should not be just a sales demo. There should be something of value that they get. And whether they purchase your product or service or not, they still walk away with a learning, some information, something, right? Maybe they're signing up for your newsletter, which you then can send out with updates about your products, about what's happening in the industry, and you can inform them and keep them up to date, but you can start building that relationship. Or maybe they sign up for some downloadable content, and that could be white papers or research. So things, we're going to talk about that next week in our content marketing discussion. We're going to talk about swipe files. So downloadable content, I'm sure we've all seen that, where you want this report, you have to give me your name and some contact information. So these are common things in business to business sort of lead generation, secondary conversions, where you can hopefully get information about who's there, who's interested, what they're interested in, so you can then follow up later on with other things. Now, again, once you've done all of this, I really recommend in advance that you set some specific key performance indicators and targets. What is it, so how many primary conversions do you want to get from your leads? How many secondary conversions do you want to get from your leads? Again, it's great to do all this marketing and look at the results later on, but if you don't set literally that finish line or that bar, how do you know that you are exceeding your expectations or meeting them or just approaching them, right? So really, even if you're like, I don't know, pick a number, right? Just pick something. And I find sometimes just by picking a number, you now have a target, and you will do everything you can to meet that number and hopefully exceed it, right? So definitely when you're setting your goals and objectives, be sure to set your targets in advance as well. Then we're going to get into developing content. And I know, as I said, this is going to be a this all next week, but I thought I'd give you a couple of sort of insights around some general categories and also the term lead magnet. You might hear this in marketing. A lead magnet is that free item or service that is given away for the purposes of gathering contact details, right? So it is that sort of free thing that you give away. And I think that's really important that you have that. So what I wanted to say is there are a couple of types of lead magnets. Next week, we're going to go into actually specific bits of these different types, sort of like different content types. But today I'm giving you more sort of general categories of lead magnets. And I want you to think about, like, what do we have that we could potentially put out there for free that falls under one of these categories? Educational lead magnets basically teach your visitors something that they don't already know. So what do you know about your customers or about their industry or about their business or about their customers that they may not already know, or that they may not be doing well, or that you can help them, get rid of some pain points, be more efficient? So educational lead magnets teach your visitors something that they don't already know. Useful lead magnets provide sort of a tutorial, a calculator, or a tool which they can then use to solve a problem. So useful lead magnets, a big one that we often see in B2B are sort of ROI calculators, different kinds of calculators, cost of ownership calculators, or maybe it's a tutorial on how to do something. So again, these are pieces that people can download or get for free or test out, and it hopefully helps them solve a problem that they've been thinking about. Community building lead magnets. And so here it is. Here I'm talking about, is there a way for your target audience to build community, right? Based on the things that they have in common. And so one of the things that we have seen in more the B2C space a little bit, but I'm starting to see a little bit more also on the business side are direct challenges, right? So direct challenges like, okay, we are going to reduce our carbon footprint by a certain amount, or we're going to reduce or we're going to increase our recycling. And, you challenge people in your industry, you challenge your customers to do things that, will make them hopefully give back to the environment. Usually there's a social element around that. And so some of these direct challenges are a great way to get lead magnets and to get people to pass it along, to actually be viral within industry. Group forums, again, does it make sense for you to create a space where people in your industry can commune and where they can come together and where they can talk about things and talk about issues? Again, I don't know what everyone's business is, but if you have, and again, back to those personality traits, if you have lots of extroverts that are in your target audience, finding a way for them to get together and to talk and to chat makes a whole lot of sense, right? So something to keep in mind, but again, tying that back to your audience to make sure that it makes sense. Entertaining lead magnets. So again, we see this in B2C and people go, oh, B2B has to be very serious. We can't entertain them. And I found that actually entertaining doesn't have to be cheesy. It can be actually quite nice, but inspiring or entertaining your audience. For example, quizzes. So it could be quizzes around, what kind of purchasing manager are you, right? And I know people are like, oh, okay. And maybe having a little fun with that, or, it could be anything in that space, but we all kind of like to take a quiz or two to sort of spice things up a little bit. So quizzes, I've seen them work. And because there aren't as many in B2B marketing, they actually tend to do better because there's less noise. And sometimes people just are curious. So, so curious, sometimes it's a matter of, which technology tool is best for you, right? And maybe you're not selling the technology, but you've done some, some research on different types of technology, and you're kind of using that insight about which ones people use to talk to your potential customers. So have fun with it, and definitely something to consider. And then finally, and this is what we see primarily in a lot of B2B, are what we call bottom of the funnel lead magnets. So these are pushing customers from consideration, from interest, to actually converting and to becoming a customer. So this is things like a free trial, discount codes, free consultations. And as I said, next week, I'm going to go into like a lot more. I think I have a list of 80 or 90 different ones. So subsets of each one of these that we'll discuss. But really, I want to give you a sense, like this week, just already start thinking about it. So next week when we come, maybe you can start asking me questions or, ideas are percolating already. But these are some of the main lead magnets that you will see that really get people to give you their contact details and allow them to initiate a relationship with you and your organization. Nurture and closing your leads. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because we have Peter on the call, and Peter has been amazing in terms of his sales presentations. If you haven't seen those, you really should go and check those out on YouTube. And really what I want to highlight is, so once you've done all this, you've done your lead magnets, you've captured their contact information. Now, depending on the customer, some of this may be automated. So you may actually close a lead in a very automated fashion. There are some very low touch processes within the B2B sort of sales process. And so maybe that's what it looks like, in which case marketing usually is pretty involved when it comes to automation and closing deals in an automated way. But sometimes there's high touch, or there's a touch necessary. And so sales is brought in to make sure that they can really customize a solution and customize the messages to people. So one of the things when you're nurturing and closing your leads, make sure you have targeted content. So make sure it is targeted to the actual audience members, the actual customer personas that you want. So you can actually identify the most qualified leads. One of the biggest things I see, especially with startups, is that they get all these leads and they're all over the map and they are solidly outside of their target audience, and they can waste a lot of time. They dilute your time and they dilute your focus. So try to make sure that your content is targeted so that in some ways you actually get rid of people who don't really suit what you're looking for. So you're not wasting your time, and the people who do come through are the ones that you want. The other thing that I found is multi-channel lead nurturing. In B2B, I've heard a lot of people often be like, okay, email, 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 and email's great, but don't just stick with one channel. Think about different channels. So definitely LinkedIn is a great social network for B2B conversations and articles and posts and things like that. You still want to do email, and Twitter is really good as well, but don't just stick with one channel because people are in a lot of different channels. Also, having multiple touch points helps people see your brand and your name in multiple places. So that's a really good tip. Multiple touches as well. So when I talk about touches, I'm talking about touch points, but I'm also talking about content types. So again, don't have everything be a long blog post. Spice it up. Video is doing really, really well in B2B sort of marketing. So because people still respond to video, you can say a lot more in video than you can often in text, and you can do it in a lot shorter time. And we're all short on time. So one of the things is, increase your interactions, have multiple types of content types. We're going to talk about those next week: infographics, audio, blog posts, podcasts. There's a lot of things we can do in the space. So make sure that there's a variety, because also different people want different things and consume it in different ways. Timely follow-ups. This is a very clear thing around sales. Make sure that you're on it when those leads come forward, when they're there. Make sure that you deal with them in a timely manner, keep them engaged, interested, and try to convert them as quickly as possible. That's a pretty obvious one. Where possible, personalize your communications. So if you can personalize things such as emails, it always does help to do that, but do it in a way that makes sense. Don't make it feel like it's been personalized by a computer. And so, really, I recently got a sales letter from a company, and they had the personalization tags in the email, but the person hadn't changed them. So it was like, hi, person that I'm supposed to be talking to, and it was quite amusing. So make sure you know how to use the tools. And if you're personalizing emails, make sure that they are truly personalized, and test them for sure before you send things out. Lead scoring, we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm sure Peter also will probably talk a bit about that, but it is really good to sort of score your leads and look at them and go and sort of prioritize them and figure out which ones should we spend our time on, because not all are equal. Some will close very quickly and bring you lots of revenue. Some will take forever. And then, you make a little bit of revenue. So you want to start really understanding which ones are, the ones that are easy to convert, and which ones are doing things in a really wonderful way. So there you go. In terms of finally sales and marketing, again, I've said this before, It has become very blurry, the line where marketing ends and sales begins, especially in the digital space. Lots of things happen digitally, and marketing has really brought a lot of automation tools and things to the party. And so they are doing a lot now in literally converting sales in a more automated fashion. But also marketing needs to have the messaging and the tools and hear from sales how we can better target, make sure we're bringing in better leads, more qualified leads. So the two really need to be in sync and aligned to make sure that the leads that marketing is bringing in are leads that are appropriate and that sales can convert if sales is necessary, or that they're also the leads that the organization wants to convert as necessary. So now the other thing that I want to highlight here is sort of referrals, because once you've nurtured and closed those leads, I want to talk a bit about referrals. And one of the areas that I find a lot of companies forgetting is a referral program of some sort, or how are we going to get our B2B customers to refer others? And I just want to highlight this infographic. Again, it's in the handouts, but 84% of B2B decision makers start the buying process with a referral. That's an astounding amount, like percentage. So that means that if your customers are referring other customers, that's probably how a lot of this will happen. Yes, we can do a lot of digital marketing, but we want to do digital marketing to encourage them to do referrals, right? So we want content to help them make more referrals. And as you will see in this, it's a little small on the screen, but basically they're saying that referrals have a higher conversion rate. 70% have a higher conversion rate when it comes from a referral. They close faster, and they generally have a higher lifetime value. So your customer lifetime value, how much money you make over the lifetime of that customer, is also higher. So referrals tend to bring you better customers, more qualified customers, but a lot of things also happen more quickly. So think about your referrals as part of your marketing and part of your sales process. So when you're asking for your customer referrals, one of the things that has been noted, there's been lots of studies done, the key to referral is to ask for them. And a lot of organizations forget to ask for referrals. So definitely, ask your customers to tell their colleagues, tell their friends, and do it, in an honest way. You don't have to push them. But if you don't ask for it, most people will not think to do it. Or they may not think that, oh, right, yeah, I have a friend who probably would really like to use using your solution, your product, your service. Obviously, the number one that we all want is word of mouth, where people sort of just say things and, tell their friends, this is awesome, you have to do it, it's great. But, we believe others more than we believe any organization. So no amount of marketing or sales that any company can do can replace a referral or a review from another person. And that's why online reviews is number 2, because we will believe someone we don't know, we've never met, and their online review more than we might even, than we will believe a marketing piece from the company itself, right? So online reviews carry a lot of weight. So also monitor those, make sure that if there are things there that you can address, that you address them where necessary. But online reviews carry a lot of weight around referrals. Obviously, social recommendations and sharing. So that's the social media space, people recommending things. Again, this is all sort of that personal contact. People like me who recommend things, I will probably look at much more closely than someone just sending me something cold or just a banner ad or even a sponsored ad somewhere in one of my feeds, right? Email referrals. So again, getting people to refer them via email. Maybe it's from your newsletter, asking people in your newsletter, share this with a friend, right? Like literally ask them. They get the email, they've already signed up, they're already kind of drinking the Kool-Aid. Let's get them to maybe pass that along, and maybe they haven't thought about it. Who else would be interested in their network to get that on a regular basis, right? And then 5th one, I have incentive-based referrals. This one you have to be a bit careful with, because people don't like feeling that, that people are giving referrals because they're being paid for it or there's something in it. But there are ways in B2B that I've seen where you have given someone, if you refer a customer, you get a 10% discount and your customer gets a 10% discount or something like that. And people go, that's money, but it also is, think about your marketing budget. How much do you spend to get a qualified customer, often that still may be cheaper to allow them to do that. I've also seen with sort of recurring subscription services, you know, if you refer someone, you get a month free. So there are lots of ways you can structure that. But incentive-based referrals are literally where there's an incentive to refer someone, but also don't make it so good that that's the only reason people do that, because then they might refer people who aren't very good, aren't well qualified. So you want to give them a bit of a discount, but, you know, be cognizant. Don't just make that the carrot that means everything happens. So at the end, we have, you know, literally our framework that we talked about tonight. Define your target audience, set your goals and objectives, develop content in your lead magnets, nurture and close your leads, and then get those customer referrals. And if you can do all of those pieces, you will have a really solid B2B lead generation framework. Now, in terms of next steps, what I would recommend you do is identify those primary and secondary markets if you haven't already. Maybe you have. But start building those detailed customer personas. I think that's a really great way to get started and for you to really use it as a filter through which you evaluate all leads, all prospects, and you can start very quickly identifying, you know what, this person doesn't fit and this person's going to waste our time. I'll keep them warm, but I'm not going to pursue it, right? I'm not going to sort of really pursue it with a lot of energy. Set those lead goals, objectives, and targets. So what is it you want them to do? Be cognizant of it. What is it you want them to do? And then what do you hope to achieve in doing that? Think about the types of lead magnets you can offer. Again, we'll go into more of this next week, but start thinking about it because maybe that'll be a great discussion next week. And review your lead nurturing and closing strategies. So go through them and look at, are we optimizing things? Could we automate some pieces of it that could be lower touch? Do we have to do a demo? Could we record a demo and let them watch that and then reach out to us for those that need it? Might there be enough people who are happy with a recorded version of it as opposed to talking to me? So really trying to figure out what are some efficiencies that you can do around your strategies. And then develop and improve your customer referral programs. So think about how can we get our customers to refer? And I know in B2C, there's like lots of like, oh, click to put in your social media account. That probably for B2B is not necessarily the optimal way to do it. Maybe on LinkedIn it is. But how about sending them an article and asking them to share it with their colleagues, right? So there are lots of things you can do that are much more subtle and probably in alignment with how things are done. So Stan is asking me a question about white labeling. Okay, so I'm not quite sure what you mean by white label. I mean, I know what white labeling is, and I'm just trying to figure out in what context. So maybe Stan, you can just put a little bit more context there so that I understand exactly what you're doing. Or you can speak up if that's easier. I don't know if they can talk, Angie, or not, so.
We'll see if Stan, if you're still there, maybe add more detail. Oh, there it is.
Okay, there we go. Thank you, Stan, appreciate it. So white labeling, so a fellow asks you to white label your app so they can sell it as theirs for a 50-50 split. So definitely, I mean, so here's the thing, you're doing a 50-50 split. You know, they're bringing perhaps a market to the table. I would say that, you know, part of this is how much work is it going to take to create a white label version of your app? If it's a lot of work, then you also need to make sure that you're getting that. Okay, you're losing branding. Yeah, you are definitely losing branding. But here's the other thing is if someone can go out there and sell to a larger audience or a market that you don't have access to, you know, it's sort of a price and volume and branding sort of a dynamic that you want to think about. So yes, you are losing branding. But the other thing is that here's the thing, there are many companies that are literally the guts of what we do and, you know, have grown huge businesses without us ever knowing what their brand is. And they're just supporting other industries. It's a different play. And so part of it is you have to figure out, is that the play you want to do or not? Because it definitely can cannibalize your own thing. So that's that would be my answer, is that I always joke about the MDA answer. It depends. I think it depends on how much more of a market share could you get by doing a white label versus keeping your own brand. because sometimes people are more open to white labeling it and putting their own brand on it, on a technology or an app specifically. Other times, it's not a big deal and they're happy to just use whatever technology solves your problem. So part of it is, what does the market look like? And I'd probably have to know a little bit more about the specific app area, but I don't think one is right or one is wrong. The 50-50 split, again, I would be running numbers and looking at the data going, how much will it take me to create that? What is my payback? What is my return on investment? And then that person who you were partnering with, I would, really want to make sure that they could guarantee that that it actually would be worth my while. And that's always where there's a bit of a risk. So I think that, part of this is sometimes I will pilot it. What I've done is I've said, hey, I like the idea. Can you bring me one or two customers that I won't white label with, but bring them to me. Let me see if we are working well. And if these are, and if that makes sense, or get them more into sort of the sales role and really handing over perhaps leads to you, qualified leads, to see if they are really delivering. And maybe that'll give you a little more confidence that they can actually deliver. Any thoughts about conceptualizing based on head and heart insights? Not personas, too head weighted. Okay, analysis and empathy. Okay, Kyle, I'm just trying to get my head around conceptualizing personas based on head and heart insights. Not personas, too head weighted. Okay, so you're asking, Kyle, are you asking if I'm adding the heart insights? Is that your question? Or you're thinking that the personas are too head weighted? So I think that I'm just trying to understand the question. I'm not quite sure I understand. So if you can just add a little more context to the Q&A, that'd be great, Kyle. Someone else is asking, do I have any advice on onboarding big B2B for a mentorship program, women in tech? So one of the things I would recommend for a big B2B for women in tech is really, I think that making sure that they see the value. If you are a small company, the other thing is how much of the onboarding can you shift to their side. And I say this to all startups. Yes, you want to onboard them, but if you're dealing with a very, very large customer, are there things that they can do to make sure that things are successful? And usually I twist it around and say, the reason I'm asking you to do this is because, these are your employees, these are your people, and I want to make sure you're in control of that. And so that's usually a little bit of how I can get them to take on a little bit more of that process. The other thing that I would do is I would do a lot of recording of things so that you don't have to be doing it all the time with big companies. And I think that that's really what I would do is try to make sure that they then have these resources, and maybe they use those resources internally, but they're kind of a bit canned, and you're there for the high value. Like maybe you come in once or twice to really give some good value, but then for very routine areas, you have all of that documented, you have it videoed, you have step-by-steps, you have PDFs. It doesn't have to be video, but you have basically structure. So you can kind of give them a package that they can get going very quickly. And then the value you're adding is, sort of the special touch, asking those special questions or answering those special questions, things along those lines. Okay, so Kyle was saying ways of seeing. It's okay, it's last minute. Okay. So actually what I will do is, for those of you that maybe still have questions, I will put my email in the chat. It's also in the presentation, but feel free to reach out to me and give me a call. I hope that this has been helpful. It is now 6 o'clock. So I hope that this has been helpful and has given you some good nuggets for thinking. It's giving you a framework around it. And as I said, I will just one last time put in the chat a PDF of my presentation. So for anyone who missed it, you can download it and you can basically, move forward. So hopefully it's been helpful. It's been a pleasure having you tonight. Thank you for your time. And again, next week, we're going to be talking about content. So I think that's going to be a pretty, lots of questions, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for saying my smile is infectious, and I'm glad that you guys have found it helpful. Again, please feel free to reach out if you have other questions. I hope it's a good foundation, a solid foundation, and hopefully it can help you avoid a lot of potholes that I myself have stepped into. I know there'll be others, but hopefully that will do that. So thank you so much. I'm glad it was informational. I really appreciate everyone. And again, I hope that it gets you stewing until our next meeting next Thursday, 5 o'clock. I hope you guys come back.
All right. Thank you, Rochelle.
And I will stop sharing.
Yeah, the thank yous are all rolling in. So we'll take that as a good sign, a good way to kick off our series. So
good.
Yeah, so we'll be back same time, same place next week. All the events are listed just on that link I just put in the chat. So feel free to join us for next week or whichever topic speaks to you. So thank you again, Rochelle. It was great. And
thank you.
We look forward to continuing the series next week.
That sounds great.